Hello, everybody. It is Friday, September the 8th, 2023, and it's time for another episode of AMA Air. Coming up today, we've got the latest updates on remote ID and other government news.
Our buddy Tony Stillman comes over to talk to us about the great event Air Power Over IAC that happened last week.
And we've got some awesome teases for you for Build Month that's coming up in October. All that and more coming up today on AMA Air. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of AMA Air. I am Matt Ruddick.
I'm Lee Ray.
What's up, Lee? How's it going with you?
It's going well. Thanks, Matt.
Texas is treating you well still, I assume.
Sure. I could talk about the heat here, but everybody knows it's pretty bad. It's like record digits for this past month.
It's got to be starting to cool down at some point, right?
No, it is.
No? It's just
my car
Texas.
said 109 yesterday, so we'll just leave it at that.
I don't care for that at all.
And by the way, I'm apologizing for the East Coast, and I'm hoping it's going due north. But Hurricane Lee is a Cat 5 in the Atlantic, so let's just hope it just goes north, and we don't have to talk about me ever again.
That would be optimal, I think, for everybody. Well,
Please.
guys, we've got a whole lot of stuff to get to today. We've got a couple of great guests. A little bit later on, we're going to be talking to Tony Stillman about the Air Power of the IAC event that happened last week here in Muncie. But first, we want to talk to Tyler Dobbs. He is our Government Affairs Senior Director to get some updates on remote ID and some other issues that are going on within government advocacy. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Tyler out and kick the show off with him. Tyler, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Lee, for having me on. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tyler, I think it's no secret to everybody that we're coming up quickly on that September 16th date that's been kind of etched in everybody's minds about remote ID. What kind of updates can you give our viewers today about that whole process, that deadline coming up? I mean, I know there's some things that we could probably discuss a little bit.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, that implementation deadline for remote ID is kind of barreling towards us here. I think that's next Saturday, September 16th. The FAA stated in their rule published a couple years ago that is the date of compliance for users. So everyone is expected to either be flying their over 250 gram aircraft with either standard remote ID built in, a broadcast module attached to an existing or traditional model aircraft, or be flying at a FAA-Recognized identification area or a FRIA. That being said, here we are just over a week away, and it's extremely difficult to get your hands on broadcast modules. There are still hundreds of FRIA applications sitting within the FAA's queue waiting to be processed. And it doesn't look like many or most will be able to comply with remote ID come next weekend. We shared these concerns with the FAA for months now. We could kind of see on the horizon that module development was slow. FRIA process really didn't start until July 5th. So after that, those meetings with the FAA, rumors started to come out that, hey, maybe this deadline somehow gets pushed back, the enforcement or what have you. And I think many viewers probably have seen some reports from the Commercial UAV Expo out in Las Vegas, where Dave Bolter, who's head of FAA Aviation Safety, said, look, there's going to be some relief. We don't know what that relief's going to be, but it's going to be something in regard to remote ID. And really, the FAA kind of has a few options here. They can do what they call discretionary enforcement, which we saw last year with the manufacturers, where they couldn't meet their deadline to get remote ID in the modules just because of shipping issues and the short timeline. So the FAA said, look, if you're making an attempt, we're not going to take any enforcement action on you. So that's kind of one option they have. They could also go through emergency rulemaking and change the rule if they saw fit. And then lastly, they could just kind of move forward and say, look, our compliance policy, which the FAA has had in place for some time now, really takes an educational approach. If you're not complying with the rules and your operations aren't really creating more of a hazard to the airspace than what's necessary, then we're just going to give you some education and tell you to comply as soon as you possibly can. And so, I think during this discussion, you'll hear me say many times that in my opinion and AMA's opinion, our operations have taken place now for decades safely. We're obviously the safest part of aviation in the airspace. And our opinion is adding a broadcast module to those operations certainly don't increase safety. It may make some aware of who's operating at certain places, but I have not seen a policy or any analyses that would say that adding a module to an aircraft for an existing operation makes that operation any safer. So that's kind of, we feel what the FAA would say if they went down an educational path, and that would be one of their options at their disposal. So regardless, long story short, today or in the coming days, we do expect something coming out of the FAA that says, look, we're going to push back enforcement of the rule. We're going to give you some extra time to comply. And hopefully that extra time allows people to get their hands on some modules and allows us to clean up this FRIA issues that we've been having. So Lee, I know you take part in the FRIA processing here for AMA, and we've all got our hands full for sure. So
there are struggles, and I know people are aware of this, but there are a lot of FRIAs that are getting denied, and for questionable reasons. And I know, talking with Tyler, a lot of these clubs that are being denied should not have that.
Yeah,
problem.
That's right. Many of these clubs have been in existence for literally decades. Some almost predate the FAA. And again, I'll reiterate, these operations have been done safely for decades. Adding a broadcast module onto aircraft, if the site is denied, does not increase safety. However, the site being denied has been based off of safety. Operations in close proximity to full-scale aircraft, operations that they say could pose a risk to people on the ground. AMA safety guidelines, AMA safety programming by law was developed within coordination with the FAA, approved by the FAA during the CBO recognition process. They have essentially said your operations are safe. Operations near full-scale aircraft, operations above or nearby people and property on the ground. It met the requirements of the FAA then. There's no reason that those same operating guidelines don't meet the requirements of the FAA now. So we have requested that the FAA provide us their analysis and their FAA policies that they're using to determine what a safe FRIA operation is and what an unsafe FRIA operation is, just so we can kind of get our heads around some of these decisions. Lee, I know you've seen this, but some of these denials we've resubmitted multiple times. Sometimes the second time we really don't change much and it gets approved. Other times we're on the third submission with multiple additional mitigations and it gets denied. We told the FAA we're never going to stop fighting and applying for these FRIAs. These operations are safe. They always have been safe. We've went through safety risk management panels with the FAA to prove that. And so we're stepping up, pressure as needed. We're obviously getting members of Congress involved in certain scenarios and having them apply pressure as well. Until we get actual data and justification as to why these denials are taking place, we're just going to have to continue to battle with the FAA on this.
I'd like to add, this is something I've shared with many of my members, and Tyler, I know you're going to nod when you hear this, but many reasons why we have clubs is to continue that safety procedure by keeping pilots out of parks and schools and having them congregate in one common area so that full-scale pilots would know they're there. And so we have clubs close to some just uncontrolled airspace, grass strips, that we talk to them all the time, or several of the full-scale pilots are members of those clubs, and they just know that they're there for that purpose, to have them stay in one position so people aren't just flying randomly all over the place. So I often push that in my documentation for free, is like, this club is meant to be there so that the full-scale pilots are aware of their existence. I see some questions coming up on comments. Tyler, would you mind grabbing a few of these? I'm going to pull them up for you because I can see one here. I think this is a good one. This is the one right before, excuse me. So I think a lot of people have asked questions about FRIAs, and that is, if there is a FRIA, do you have to be a member of that club? Can you explain that?
So, I think for the vast majority of these, yes, most clubs do require membership within the club and within AMA, and there seems to be a tendency within the FAA to approve FRIAs that follow suit with that. They want to be able to ensure that the people flying there are identified. If you're not a member of the club and you're not a member of AMA, that makes that more challenging to do so. There are some educational institute FRIAs where obviously there's membership not required. There will likely be some AMA FRIAs where membership is not required. However, the point of contact for this FRIA is basically putting his or her name on this to say, look, I'm going to make sure that everybody operating at this site does so under this memorandum of understanding with the FAA. This is a FRIA location. It has to follow ABC rules. And so I'm in charge of doing so. So without that membership, there's really not an enforcement arm. If somebody is out there doing something illegal, that they can obviously reach out to law enforcement of others, but that's a longer process typically to try to find out what the rules are for that site and who shouldn't be there. So
yeah, and there's costs for some fields that are leased and
Right.
insurance liability. So the club charges members to pay for that. So that would be one reason. So if you are looking for a FRIA and you're not a member of a club, consider that that's one reason why there are dues, is to help pay for that land. So you have that safe place to fly.
And there are some sites obviously where that are open to the public,
Or county owned, correct?
right? Whether or not they get FRIA status, I think that's yet to be determined.
Okay. So the question I have, and if you can explain this, because there's a lot of videos online right now about remote ID being extended, where the rumors are flying. But to me, there are two different approaches, and you kind of touched on them, but I want to have you address them one more time. There's two. There's the remote ID deadline, and that's September 16th, and then there's the enforcement period. And what are the chances they could actually move the deadline versus extend the enforcement period?
I think moving the deadline would be difficult. I think that they're going to say, look, some of this is possible. There are 1,000 approved FRIAs, and there are thousands of broadcast modules that people have their hands on, whether that be through standard remote ID or an add-on module. So I think they'll say, look, if you have it, use it. If you're flying at a FRIA, we're considering that your way to identify. So I don't see them pushing that back. What I really think will happen is they'll say, we're not going to take enforcement for those who are attempting to comply with the rules until whatever that date is, January 1st, 2024, or somewhere around there. I don't know if they push it off for 3 months, 6 months, or what have you, but I think
24 months.
I think a pushback of
wishful thinking.
Yeah, I think a pushback of enforcement is much more likely. And my rumors from my contacts are saying, look, we need enough time to work out these FRIA issues because of all the bad with the FRIA process. We do have a handful of people within the FAA who are really going to bat for AMA and these requests. And they're making that case. Look, these aren't sites that we don't know what the outcome is going to be if we allow this to operate without remote ID. These sites have been there. They're established. They've been there for years, often for decades. And they've proven that they're a safe operator. They've proven that the likelihood of a scenario with the full-scale aircraft, whether that be a collision or near miss, are extremely improbable. And if you look to air traffic safety mitigation system, extremely improbable is the lowest risk on the spectrum you can get to. So we're happy to be there, and we're happy that we don't create issues in the airspace. And that's kind of what we've been pushing. Look, we have a proven history of safe operations. You've given us no data, no policies, no anything from the FAA that proves adding a broadcast module mitigates all of these safety concerns that you're mentioning that are reason for denial for FRIAs. So, how are you making this determination? And we're still awaiting those answers, and hopefully we get them soon.
And I haven't done a lot of research or data picking, but I tend to think that most of the close calls they talk about never occurred at an AMA club.
Sure.
So
yeah, I mean, we view our sites obviously as that's a way to identify. I mean, if you read the final rule, FRIA is really just one of the three paths. They're almost the team that's approving and denying now is almost viewing it as some sort of exemption from the rule, and we don't view it that way. We view it as just one of the three paths to comply. We want that to be an option. That's what we were going into this under the impression that the FAA was going to take this process serious, and really it was going to be let's get all of these FRIA requests approved quickly so we can move on about our day and continue flying. That hasn't been the case, and if the process continues how it has been going, it's going to be a long next year for AMA and the FAA FRIA processing team. I can't reiterate enough. We will not let this go. We'll continue applying and adding mitigations and applying pressure however we can for the denied clubs until we get every club approved.
Well, I'll leave a happy note here. My friend George asked a question about a club I'm very familiar with. I grew up flying near Scobie. I actually flew there before it existed, but Scobie was approved for their FRIA. So and that's a county-owned field. So very happy to let you know that, George.
Well, we've got a couple other topics we want to touch on before we let you get out of here, Tyler. I know you said that you had some updates with regard to letters of agreements and that process. What can you tell us about that?
I do. So if you're flying at a fixed flying site in controlled airspace and you currently fly with a letter of agreement with your air traffic control facility, that process is being converted into a 7711 airspace authorization. That's going to be a lengthy process as well. We kind of got the first draft of what that authorization is going to look like. We were not happy with it. It had some unnecessary restrictions placed on it. We met with the FAA and they have agreed to remove all of those restrictions. So we're waiting on the next draft. But it was going to require that one person from the club be responsible party for everybody. It's going to require he or she gather all the FAA registration numbers from every member of the club, which certainly is not the responsibility of that person. By law, that's not a requirement to provide that to a club member. And it just a host of issues. Long story short, we've sat down with air traffic and flight standards, and that is being redrafted and reworked. The new authorizations will look similar to your letter of agreement and have the same provisions in it. So give us some time. If you've already received a draft, continue flying under your letter of agreement, and we're going to rewrite that with the FAA and hopefully get that done here by the end of this year.
Well, the other thing that we're kind of waiting on by the end of this year, I think, is FAA reauthorization, because we're back in that kind of time frame again. We've talked a little bit about that in the past. What kind of updates do you have on FAA reauth?
Sure. So August recess just ended. The Senate came back on Tuesday after Labor Day, and that's really what we're waiting on. If viewers remember, the House has already passed their version of the new FAA reauthorization, which puts us in a much better spot than the current law. It allows for higher altitudes in uncontrolled airspace. It has some educational provisions added to it, cleans up some issues with the large model aircraft program and those operations. The Senate is very similar. However, AMA was able to work with a couple senators to get an amendment to that bill. We're waiting for the Senate to mark that bill up, which means the committee that writes the bill basically gets to make a few tweaks. And while they work through that process, we hope they'll accept AMA's amendment in what's called a manager's package that essentially automatically gets that added to the bill. We've got some verbal assurances from some senators that is the case, but we have to see what happened after recess. It's been a month or two, and since they originally tried to mark the bill up, there's some issues they've been trying to negotiate with full-scale pilot training and some hour requirements for that. So as soon as they start doing markup, we'll be able to get a better sense of how that's going to go. Even if the bill stays as is in the Senate without AMA's amendment and what we have in the House, we're confident that the new law will put us in better shape than where we currently are. So that's promising.
Well, before we let you go, there were a couple of questions I saw pop up that I thought might be worth touching on here briefly on the show. One question, I know this has been a question, and I feel like there were some mixed answers to this early in the process, but I think it's been cleared up now. WTG Photo asked if will new clubs be allowed to establish FRIAs in the future?
They will. So if you have a new club with a new location, you can request that site via FRIA. If you have an existing FRIA location and your club decides to get another property or move locations, you can request a new FRIA for that new site or an additional site if you would like to do so.
Yeah, I think where a lot of that confusion came from was the early rule for remote ID and the FRIA situation indicated there was only going to be a short, limited time where you could even apply. But we were able to get that kind of stricken from everything, right?
Sure. So I see somebody ask, is there anyone in the industry or hobby that thinks FRIA is a good idea? Yeah, there's a lot in the industry, in the hobby, and full scale that thinks FRIAs are a good idea. They like the idea of a known location where multiple people go to. The opposite of that, is dozens of people flying in unknown locations, and you relying on 100% compliance from those users. So EAA supports FRIAs. Wing, commercial UAS company, an Alphabet company, they support the ideas of FRIAs. I've met with Zipline at Oshkosh, and they're supportive of our sites. Wing and Zipline both in their delivery and future delivery of commercial products. They have essentially requested, and we provide regular updates of all of our flying sites across the country, and they fly around those and just completely avoid them for AMA. So there's no chance of conflict between a model aircraft and their delivery. So it's supported by many in the industry. We think it's a good idea. We think that it meets the remote ID requirement. There's obviously oversight at those locations, more oversight, in my personal opinion, than registering through the drone zone and adding a serial number from your broadcast module. I could go on the drone zone right now with a gift card that I purchased from Walmart and essentially add anybody's name that I want to my registration, tie a serial number to it, and I'm whoever I want to be. That's not much oversight. So if their attempt is to make the airspace safer by adding these broadcast modules, I think they've kind of gotten off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, I think we all probably would agree with that.
I totally agree with that.
This is another good one. I know this has been a topic before. Mad Sloper asked is the FAA going to allow temporary FRIAs for F3J sailplane contests?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually, a couple of weeks ago, the FAA reached out to us, and there is a process now to request temporary FRIAs. So it's very specific in how we have to request that. We need to determine with the FAA if that has to come through the contest director or through the CBO, and they're trying to make that determination now. But that process is apparently up and running. We haven't had anybody reach out to request it as of yet, but we can do so whenever folks are ready to make those requests.
And then we'll kind of wrap up with this one. I think this is another really great question that I know a lot of people have. Jack Schroeder asked, where is the list of approved FRIAs posted? The FAA is going to have a list of those. Is that right?
They will. I don't know when they will have that up and running, but they are going to add each FRIA to the UAS facility map, which is the FAA's map you can go to and see all of the controlled airspace and the predetermined Lance altitudes on those sites. As of right now, they have a list of AMA fixed sites, which are sites in controlled airspace. Those are different than FRIA sites. I would assume that they will remove those fixed sites and only have FRIA sites in the future. It's kind of old data from 4 or 5 years ago, and many of that is incorrect. But in the future, moving forward, that will be on the UAS facility map. In addition, AMA on our club finder, every club that has FRIA status is going to get a little FRIA symbol. So here in the coming days or weeks, you'll be able to go to AMA's club finder, look up a club, and determine if it's a FRIA or not.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. I just added the link to the FAA maps, the UAS data map, and I've had a lot of people ask me, like, I don't see my club on here. Again, as Tyler just said, all the dots are fixed sites, and you can look at the layers on the left. We're hoping that they'll add the other layer, correct, Tyler? That'll just say FRIAs, so you can turn it on and off. Okay.
Yeah, hopefully so. We'll have to kind of wait and see how that all looks, but hopefully they do add that. And I saw somebody say they had an event on the 23rd of September. I want to point out the importance of getting your request in early. I have no idea how long that's going to take for an exemption to remote ID for an event that takes place away from a FRIA. Depends on the backlog. I think at the earliest, you're going to need 30 days. And then the number of requests that come in is obviously going to extend that time frame out. So hopefully we hear of an extension to enforcement from the FAA here soon. And then we can start applying for some of these one-off site exemptions for events and get some sort of sense on how long we're gonna need, but there will be some leeway that will be needed there. If you reach out to AMA and say, hey, next weekend I have an event, I'd like to get it exempt from remote ID, I'm going to assume you probably are too late in the game for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything with the government. I mean, if you've got to request something from them, you better do it well in advance, because we all know how quickly they like to move, which is not at all. Well, guys, first of all, Tyler, I want to thank you so much for your time, and I want to let everybody know we've got some resources on our website at modelaircraft.org that I would encourage you guys to go check out if you want to learn more about remote ID and some of the things that from the technology side that are going on. We've got an excellent post that's up there. If you go to modelaircraft.org, our main slider, we have a couple of sliders there on the main page that'll take you to where you want to go. First is going to be a report that was done by one of our committees through our executive council. It was headed up by Andy Argenio, who's our District 1 VP, that kind of broke down some of the different remote ID modules. It was a pretty detailed graph in there that kind of gives you the components of each module, the price, the weight, size, all of that sort of stuff. If you want to learn more about some of those modules, that's a great resource you guys could go check out. That crew did a really good job of putting that together. There's also a really great article that's been posted on our blog, written by our AMA staff, that kind of goes through some of the technical aspects of remote ID and kind of where we are as of now. I would encourage you guys to go check it out. I think it's going to answer a lot of questions for you and kind of demystify some things for some of you, I think. So I would encourage you guys to go check those out.
I'll add one thing. I see a question here. Is it time to write Congress if we've been denied FRIA status? We're compiling that list, and we actually we've had a couple congressional offices reach out to the FAA and open inquiries. What we want to do is try to exhaust all paths before we go down that road on a larger scale. That being said, I know Lee and I just had a discussion before this. We have a spreadsheet where we're adding the sites. But, if you're in Texas, we don't want to bother the senators every single day of the week as new sites get denied. So likely at the end of, say, September, we'll have the 15 sites that we're still struggling with, and I just use the end of September loosely. We really haven't set that date, but then we can take all 15 to the senators and congressional representative and say, look, we have these sites in your state or in your district. We would like you to open up an inquiry as to why they're denied and what, again, FAA policy or data analysis was used to make that determination. And that will streamline the process and for the congressional offices and make things much simpler on them. They're obviously going to help us through this process. So we want things to be streamlined and quick, and certainly don't want to place additional burdens on them.
Absolutely. Well, Tyler, again, thank you. I know you're one of the busiest people I know. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come talk to us and give everybody a little bit of an update of what's going on.
Appreciate it. And if viewers have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If it's specific about the FRIA, the applications, where it stands, Lee, works on that. Alona Main and the clubs department have a hand in that. But any of us would be happy to address those questions and try to help you out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler.
Thank you.
Before we move on, Lee, I do want to point out there is one other question that I feel like I can quickly address. Frank Mintz asked a question and said, is there any required signage at AMA FRIA sites? I don't believe there's anything required, but I can tell you that we are working on some graphics and things that we're going to provide to our FRIA sites that we've gotten approved, that you can then use whether on your website, on your social media channels, or if you want to print out and post at your site. We're working on those. We're not quite ready yet, But we'll keep you posted about when those are going to be available. So you'll have something there that you can post up. Okay, let's talk to. I have to confer with my notes. I apologize. So Lee, we're going to start. We're going to go to you next because we want to talk about an event that you're about to go to. I think next week, right?
Yes, near and dear. As long as I don't melt, I'll tell you. I was out there a couple of years ago sweltering, and I was dead. But I'll tell you, the heat's out here, folks. But there's a great event out in Monteville, Texas, Bomber Field. It's the 35th anniversary. Let me pull up my flyer here for you guys real quick. Actually, let me go to just the flyer so you guys can just see it for all its glory there. But guys, this is a fun event. If you've never heard of it, you got to come visit. But the B-17 Gathering and Big Bird Flying, that's the official name. But we just call it the Bomber Field. I mean, that's just the name of the place, but that's where we go. A lot of great warbirds, a lot of great pilots. I think we had over 150 pilots last year. And it's, B.B. Weber is the gentleman who owned the land, who built the runway. I don't have these pictures here. I probably should have brought up the show, but I went through some photos I took maybe 20 years ago when they had a control tower there too at one point. So it's a lot of fun. And so hopefully on the next show that we air for AMA Air, I will be showing you clips and highlights from Bomber Field. Chris Wolf has visited us before out there, and
nice.
He's dealt with the heat too, so it can get you down. But there's some amazing craftsmanship out there. So that's my goal this year. Is I really don't have anything to fly. Somewhere back there in the corner of my office here is my big P-38 Lightning that I still got to work on, and someday it'll be out at Bomber. But for now, I think I'm just going to go out there as a reporter and share with you guys all the fun that happens out there.
Well, I'm sure you're going to have a blast no matter what the temperature is. And you're going to see some really impressive airplanes and some scale airplanes at that. And speaking of scale airplanes and warbirds specifically, last weekend we had a really awesome event here at the IAC called Air Power Over the IAC. It's an event that traditionally this week, that particular weekend in the year was set aside for our Indiana Warbird campaign, and it has since closed, and we have shifted over to a new event that's taken its place called Air Power Over the IAC. And to talk to us a little bit about that event, I would be pleased to welcome to the show Tony Stillman. He is our Technical and Safety Director here at the AMA. He was also the Contest Director for this event. Tony, welcome to AMA Air, sir.
Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. So, Air Power Over the IAC, tell us about this event, how it came to be, and how did it go?
Well, it was kind of an interesting process. A couple years ago, the event, Dennis and Linda Crooks, who had done Indiana Warbird campaign, just announced that they were going to step away, and it was time to close that event down. And I just kind of stepped up. I thought some others would ahead of me, but I stepped up and said, I just don't want this event to go away. We need to continue this weekend flying airplanes. And so the new SIG Warbird and Classics Alliance, which Chuck Hamilton is the president of, supported me in doing that. This event became part of the Warbird and Classics Alliance. And obviously the video you're seeing is from this last weekend. And Bryce Hutchins did that video for us, and I appreciate that very much. But those guys stepped up and really helped me. RJ Monroe was also a big piece of this, and he helped me to put things together. My wife was instrumental in helping me with it, my wife Terry. And so we had a really good turnout for our inaugural event. We weren't able to have it last year due to some problems we had with the runway. So we ended up having a year away, and Lee will attest to what that can do to events when you just don't have one for a year. So there was a lot of press to have this event. And so, we pushed on with it, and it just came out really well. I'm very pleased. We had 52 registered pilots, well over 100 airplanes there. Beautiful weekend. We couldn't ask for any better weekend. Weather was great, not too hot, in the low 80s most of the time, and lots and lots and lots of flying. So they were able to take a lot of good shots for that. We actually have coverage on our site, rcairpower.org. Airpower.com, I'm sorry. we will have pictures posted there shortly of the events that was covered. But a lot of good flying, a lot of good pilots, a lot of good times talking. And the focus this year was we do a lot of different things at these kind of events, different gaggles and groups of flying. The focal point for me was just to get guys to have time to fly. So we had 5 flight stations. Like I said, probably 100 pilots, 100 airplanes or more, and lots of guys got flights. I talked to several people. Several told me they got in over 30 flights individually on the weekend. That's a lot of flying.
Wow.
And so I think from just that point, I would give it a really strong success because everybody just got to fly and talk and just deal with giant scale warbirds. It was a lot of fun.
It was an incredible time to be out there and kind of experience everything because it's, we always talk about how you go out to these contests and these events and these fun flies and everybody's having a good time, but it felt like it was a notch above out there. I mean, I saw people smiling, laughing on the flight line. It was incredible, and it was run like a well-oiled machine, Tony. The pilots coming in, landing, taking off. I got to ask you, because it's been a question that's asked to me, and I don't have a really great way of explaining it. Maybe you might. I'm throwing this at you. I didn't warn you about it. I apologize. So in some of the photos that we've been seeing the folks at the pilot stations holding red and green paddles. Can you explain what these red and green paddles are and how they work?
Yeah, there's actually 2 pieces to what we do, and I think it's a really cool process. Some people might think it's a little overkill on site management, but basically we have a flight line boss. That flight line boss is just like the pilot talking to the tower. And so we start with the process of you have a little startup box for your aircraft. So you crank the engine up and the pilot requests for permission to taxi. So they ask the flight station, the flight boss, say, station 3, request taxi. And the flight boss will answer back to them. And they'll hold up a green paddle that I'm getting ready to taxi and take off. And that tells everybody in a quick sight as well as by voice that they're taxiing out, and the flight boss will give them directions to taxi to the left or the right, and that's at Alpha or Bravo. And they taxi that direction, hold, and then he'll give them clearance to take off. Same thing for landing. When you want to land, you request for landing. And the nice that people might think that's an overkill, but what really happens is if you think about it as a pilot, and you got 5 guys on the flight line, or maybe more if we're doing a gaggle, and you're flying along, you kind of wonder where everybody is. Is it good? Is it safe for me to land? Is somebody else taxiing out? Because I'm looking at my airplane and can't look down on the ground. So you've got somebody that's managing that for you. So you just request your takeoff or landing, whatever it is. The flight boss is giving you clearance and letting everybody else know that you're number 1 to land or whatever the situation is. And you can focus on flying the aircraft, and your spotter can focus on the aircraft that are around you. So it really works very well. And the whole process, not only does it give a certain amount of safety, but it gives a way for you to manage aircrafts, especially a large amount of aircraft, and get them up and down safely and expeditiously so that there's no problems. They can have a clear space to land and taxi away, and the next person has clear space to land. So the process is really good. It's on our website. It's actually on the Warbird and Classics Alliance.com. You can go to that website, and there's several videos that RJ's put together on how this actually works. And I would recommend the CDs in the area and modelers that are watching us take some time and look at that video. My local club is even kind of adding on the idea of having a flight boss for some of their events, just because it adds that extra level of safety, and in my opinion, it adds an extra level of fun. It kind of gives you a little more realistic activity of what you actually do when you're flying, and it just makes it much more safer. I have a total confidence when I go out and fly my Warbird that I'm going to have a good place to take off and fly around and a good place to land.
Well, to me, it's at its basic form, it's an extension of the whole idea of participating in scale modeling, where you work so hard to build and craft an aircraft that is, as realistic as possible, just in a smaller form. You try to fly it as realistically as you could possibly fly that particular airplane, as if it was a full-scale aircraft. you're going through the same processes here to request takeoff, request landing, all of that stuff. You're trying to make this as realistic as possible. That's part of the fun of it, I think. So I think that just adds to that realism.
Yeah, and I think the modelers, the guys that fly, I think they enjoy doing it, but I think in the back of their mind, it's that added level of knowledge that someone else is watching out for me,
right?
And they're going to keep my airplane safe, give me good. When they say it's clear to land, it really is clear to land. I don't have to look left and right down the runway myself. So I think that gives you confidence to be able to fly and just enjoy the flying.
It's co-pilot.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Exactly.
It's nice to have that.
Yeah, I was going to mention at Joe Knoll, they have the PVC pipes, that you hold up, and you can go a little higher than a little paddle. So, they've got them colored blue and green for takeoff and landing. And I'll tell you, as a pilot, you kind of want to glance left and right to see if you're clear, and you can see someone sticking out the PVC pipe to give you a heads up if it's safe enough. Because as a pilot, if someone's already committed to land, you want to give them the right of way. So it's good to be helpful out there so that everybody can take off and land in one piece.
Right. And I just think it added another level of fun and safety to the whole piece. But here again, the focal point was everybody having plenty of place to fly. The runway is almost 1,000 feet long, about 170 feet wide, 1-inch cut grass. We've had that grass down a year now, and it's been there long enough that the roots are really taken in well. And so we were able to cut the grass really low. Really had no problems with it. Just the new site that our maintenance crew has worked so hard to level, all the work that Mike Barbie's crew did a couple years ago, and others in addition, have really made that site wonderful. And so, whether or not you get to come to fly at that event, if you're in the area and you get an opportunity, I would invite you to come to the AMA and get a flight out at Site 4. I think it's a wonderful place to fly. It's a great place to test fly models. I take a lot of my models there and fly just because it's a nice big open area. So, but put something together that's a Warbird Classic, which is 1950s or earlier for the classics, and a Warbird. And we're going to have this thing again next year at the same Labor Day weekend. So we'd love to have you come and attend.
It was just incredible to see not just the amount of aircraft that were out on display, kind of lined up along the flight line last weekend, but the size of some of these things these are some of the big aircraft that you always dreamed to kind of come out and watch fly, and it was so cool. I'm so glad that I got to be there. I do know for folks that can't be here, obviously we showed you some video clips earlier. That's up on our social media channels, as well as these photos. There's also going to be an article that's being written for Model Aviation Magazine covering this event. One of our magazine staffers, she was out on site to cover that. So it's going to be well covered for everybody to check out.
And I appreciate them taking the time to do that. She spent a lot of time, Clarissa spent a lot of time out there, got a lot of really good pictures, and talked to a lot of pilots. She even went down the road of asking for some information. She had some pages printed out for the pilots to fill out about the information about their airplanes. So I'm looking forward to seeing the article. And here again, I think our pilots just enjoyed the fact that there was a lot of interest at this inaugural event.
Yeah, she was also quick to point out that a couple of the folks out there were offering her popsicles throughout the warm day. So I big shout out to those guys for doing that. That was very kind of you. Although I didn't get offered a popsicle when I was out there, and I'm a little offended by that. But that's okay. That's all right. That's fine.
Yeah, Brian Taylor actually brought his snow cone machine, and so we had snow cones out there available, and that was a lot of fun too.
Missed out on the snow cones too. Oh man, I picked the wrong time to come take pictures.
You gotta come out there.
Well, Tony, thank you for taking some time to talk about Air Power Over the IAC, and congratulations on an incredible event. I anticipate next year is going to be just as big, if not bigger, and it's going to be a great time. I did see someone, David Spielman, in the chat said that the PBRCA, they're going to be hosting their Warbirds Over the Glades November 4th and 5th in Delray Beach, Florida. That ought to be real cool. I can just about imagine. David, send us some pictures from that event if you would. I would love to see kind of what that looks like out in that scenery. It's got to be beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah. And the Warbirding Classics Alliance has about 8 events throughout the year in kind of the Midwest, and they're looking to actually expand more events, even down in Florida, out west. So, there's just we can help with some how you organize if you haven't done a Warbird event, or maybe you've done one for a while and you're interested in maybe taking it to a next level. Warbirding Classic Alliance is a SIG that's designed to help clubs do that. And to be honest with you, you can make a few dollars for your club. Warbirds are very popular, and so it's something to keep in mind. If you have questions about that, I'd be glad to help you with that.
Fantastic. Well, Tony, thank you again for taking some time out of your day to come chat with us about the event.
Sure.
We will see you soon, sir.
All right. Thanks, guys. You have a good day.
Tony.
Bye, Tony.
Well, guys, we've got just a few other small things we want to touch on before we wrap up the show. The first, we want to show you something really cool that's just dropped by our museum, about a week ago or maybe 2.
I think you should talk about it because you had your hands on it.
To be fair, I didn't touch it. I'm not allowed to touch things.
But you were closer than I was.
The gloves they have over there, they don't fit my hands, so I don't get to touch anything. So I want to, for those of you that fly control line, I have to ask if you've ever thought about how long you could fly a control line airplane in one go. Like, how long do you think you could go? Spinning around in a circle. Could you go 20 minutes? Could you go an hour? Could you go 3 days? Because that's the real question. One of the newest additions to the National Model Aviation Museum is this amazing piece of history. This control line airplane. I don't have the details, all the details in front of me. I can tell you. I'm trying to see if I can read this here.
Well, I can jump in if you want.
This is from the Eugene Prop Spinners. In 1957, they flew this modified control line airplane for, wait for it, 64 hours, 33 minutes, and 15 seconds, and it never touched the ground.
Never touched the ground. Yeah, this is when Michael Smith, curator of the museum, called me and said, "Hey, I have something cool at the museum." I was like,
which to be fair, Michael always says that he has something cool at the museum, and often it is, but I do think this rises a little bit above.
Well, it really came when he told me. I said, "Are you sure you didn't mean minutes?" It's like hours. I mean, I can't keep an engine running for that long, but there are some details you need to know about this because people are going, "Well, how can you have a little tank run that long?" It had nothing to do with that at all. But I give kudos to the K&B motor. It's an Allen Torpedo 35 for lasting this long. It's modified because you can see, and I'm going to bring up pictures for us right now. It's modified in that the engine right here added a spark plug. So it had a glow plug and a spark plug. So I don't know where the attachment was, but they must have had current, ignition.
They added a spark plug and some melting metal to the top.
Well, so here is this aircraft. I got to say it has done really well for the museum as far as a post. Over 50 shares now. Definitely hit off real well at the control line group that's on Facebook. I encourage you to go listen to read some of their comments. But and this was cool too. We mentioned this. See the hinges? They're door hinges. They're like cabinet hinges. And when I first saw them, it's like, why did they do that? Well, they found out during their first test that the hinges they had, the little nylon hinges, kept breaking. So their tests must have been hours, or you're just assuming that. So they modified it to use the metal hinges, and it controlled it. But I've got a picture here that you haven't seen yet, Matt.
Oh, really?
So yeah, give me a second. I want to surprise you with this photo. Let me pull this out. But we were, people have been asking, gosh, it would be great if we had some newspaper clippings or something like that to talk about it. Well, guess what? We do. So Michael Smith sent this to me today, and here are the photos, folks. So this might help you understand a little bit more, but the pilot in command is wearing a vest of fuel. And the pilot that would take over is wearing a vest of fuel. And so they would come up and switch the fuel line that ran down the wires to one main tank. And just talking with some other people, I first was asking, how did it flow down that line? Did they have to have a pump? Well, basically they let physics take over, and centrifugal force pulled the fuel down the lines and into the tank. So these guys would switch off with a fuel vest and just go back and forth for 3 days. And it happened over a weekend. So these guys like, hey, y'all busy? You want to go have some fun? Let's go take this sucker out. So kudos, man.
I have to point out just a couple of things. First of all, the brilliance to use centrifugal force, to use that as the way to get the fuel out of the vest into the airplane. Brilliant. I love that. But the idea of a vest full of fuel.
Well, it's not that combustible. I mean, you could say it is, but it's not. It's nitro.
But I'll tell you, just the thought of it, that's, I mean, hey.
Harold,
good for them.
Thanks for posting the comment, Harold. I was thinking the same thing, but if you notice the other photo, and I can bring it up, the airplane had 2 fuel tanks. So what I think they did was they had fuel go down to one main tank, and then there's a little sub tank that pulled fuel that was always full. So I don't think the air was the issue. But to me, the issue is, how do you keep an engine running without letting so much oil gunk it up?
Yeah.
I mean, I have engines that don't last very long, and I have to clean them or run what is called after run fuel through them, cleaner. But man, I just wanted to say this is an incredible piece to the museum. Thank you so much, guys, for donating it. And there is more information to come. Michael has found some other articles, so we'll be adding to that post so people can continue to follow along as we find out more and maybe get some stories directly from the pilots.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, guys, 1957 they did this. 1957. And the record has stood since then. It is still holds the record for the longest flight for control line, I believe. Don't quote me on what the actual verbiage of the record title is, but it's kind of incredible.
Well, what I was told is that the rules changed. So, when they bend them so far, you can't.
There it is.
Having an extra fuel tank won't work. So in this case, you have to have just one tank, and it's limited to size. So you really are trying to be as efficient, as sleek as possible in the modern contest. But back then, no holds barred. Hey, watch this kind of mentality, right?
It's incredible. Well, we're going to have more information about this incredible piece of aviation history in the coming months. We're going to probably, I know we're going to get some better photos. We just went over and snapped a few things so that we could put it up on social media, but we're going to actually get it professionally photographed. Professionally, I'm going to do it. It's fine.
You did.
And I'm sure we're gonna try to get Michael on the show. I think we were gonna try to get him on for today, but he had some other things going on and didn't have the time to spare for us. But we're gonna get him on to talk a little bit more about it in more detail, because it's an incredible story, and it's one that I hope we get to talk about a lot more, because it's so fascinating to me. Let's jump over real quick to talk about, in just a second, we're going to talk about Club of the Month and iFly AMA cover photo. But first, I want to mention the October build month, because next month, as we do every year for quite a while now, October is what we celebrate as our build month. It's kind of our unofficial start of build season for many of us throughout the United States.
For you cold folks, for you stuck at home because of the snow.
I realize this is probably build season for you, Lee, because you can stay inside in the air conditioning.
That's exactly right.
So we've got a few special things that we've got planned for next month. I've got something and you've got something. Lee, do you want to kick it off and talk about what you're kind of planning?
Okay, well, we will still do build tip videos. We'll work with other pilots and ask them to provide some of their favorite tips. So we've had some great ones last year. David Lindley's one about rubber bands and keeping them in the freezer. That was good for me, because I've always wanted to know how to extend the life of my rubber band. So I appreciate him taking the time to do that. But we wanted to come up with something fun to be interactive with our members. And so what we've come up with is a year build from October to October. So we'll announce in more details shortly. But what we will do is offer members to start a kit, document the build, and have a flight video of the plane flying, again, within 1 year, to submit as a contest. And we will pick first, second, and third place winners with our elite staff of judges, me being one of them. We'll add them later. But we want you guys to share with us a build, something that you're going to work on. Now, obviously, if you're building a full scale something, you kind of want to just go back to something basic, simple, a little trainer plane perhaps, or something smaller that you can get done within a year, because we don't want you to rush it. So we're going to ask you to follow some steps, take some, at least maybe once a month, a photo of the build status, or, just a handful, especially if you can submit more video. And then we'll compile all that and share it on our social media channels for our members so that they can get some ideas and tips from your build.
Yep.
So look forward to...
We want to inspire folks to if they see you building, I might give them the push they need to go find something for themselves to build.
Well, I'm one of those, hey, I've always wanted to build that.
Yep.
And again, we'll have more details in our next episode of AMA Air, and we will require submissions to be turned in September of 2024, just so we can compile everything and announce the winner in next October.
That'll be super fun. I can't wait to see what everybody builds and to see their process, because as you mentioned, we always learn from other people. We're going to learn stuff from these submissions, I think, about what everyone's process is, because it's always a little different.
Well, just to let you know, I'll be building one too. I'm not, able to win, but I want to, join along with the fun so we can share this with everybody and keep track.
Very cool. Very cool. Are you willing to tell us what you're going to build yet?
Nope.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, the other thing I wanted to mention to you guys has to do with the next episode of AMA Air. So the October edition of AMA Air. We'll let you know what the date is. We haven't finalized the broadcast date quite yet, but we'll let you know well in advance, because it's important. It's going to be important that you tune in live for that episode of AMA Air. We're going to have a very special guest on. We're going to have Brian Schiller. He's from Dubrow. He's going to be on. We're going to make a little bit of a special announcement, and we want you to be here for that. But more importantly, Brian's going to be giving something away. He's going to be giving away a new quicksander from Dubrow. We're going to give it away live on the show. You have to be watching the show to enter and to win. So
does that make me eligible?
No, I'm sorry, you can't win. Me either. And there may be some other goodies that we might be giving away as well, so it might be more than just that. But awesome. That is the key, though. You'll have to be watching live to win that contest. We'll do the drawing here live on the show, and it'll be fun. So be sure you stick around for that episode. Again, that'll be the first week of October, rather. We'll be sure to promote that on social media, let everybody know when that's happening well in advance, so you can make your plans to tune in and join us to hear a really cool announcement. I'm not going to spill the beans yet, not allowed, but I do know what it is. So if anybody wants to bribe me, I might drop a hint or two. So it's going to be fun. So I hope you guys get to join us for that show. Lee, let's talk about Club of the Month real quick.
All right. A little late coming out. That was my fault. FRIAs. I'm going to blame FRIAs. That's it. If I can put a blame for the delay, it's going to be FRIAs for the next few months. But I want to congratulate our Club of the Month, the Boise Area Radio Control Society, also known as BARCS. And congratulations, guys. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary. Again, this is one of those, Tyler's was still here. This is a club that deserves a FRIA because they've been doing it a long time. And what a nice field. I got to exchange emails with Carl Watts, the president, and he was very nice at giving me some really cool photos up here. We got youth involved. They have a great STEM program. They work with local schools. It looks like they have a lot of fun events out there, but you can see by the flyer. Let's see if I click on it, if it pulls it up yet. Here comes their 50th anniversary party called the September Fest Flybration. So that's unique on words. So that's next weekend. I'll be at Bomber and I'll be cheering them on. But what a great date to celebrate. So kudos to the guys who started it, and I'm sure they're proud that these guys were able to make it last this long. So again, thanks guys for being our Club of the Month, Boise Area Radio Control Society.
50th anniversary. That's
50th anniversary.
Incredible. Every time we see, and we've seen a few of those anniversaries pop up over the last couple of years, whether it be a 50th or a 60th anniversary or whatever the case is. And I'm always just so inspired that a club can last that long. Over the last 50 years, there are a lot of things that have happened, and it's so cool that they've been able to endure and stick it out, and they're still going strong. It's so awesome to see.
And I'll just go to it speaks volumes of the board members who've been able to get more people involved who hand it over to the next group. So it's great generational. So Good job, guys. Y'all deserved it.
Absolutely. Well, finally, we have one more thing we need to cover for today, and that is our iFly AMA cover photo contest. Guys, if you're not a member of their iFly AMA Facebook group, head over to facebook.com/groups/iFlyAMA to join today. You got to answer a couple of questions if you haven't done that already. We just want to make sure that you're a human, not a robot, all that fun stuff. We want to keep all the robots out. We don't need ChatGPT in our group. Just keep it out. Lee's going to make sure that you're on the up and up.
They're out there. I'm hitting the denial button. I know what it's like.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, these people are not legit. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's congratulate them.
Yeah, so if you come in, join the conversation, it's a great time, and we, once a month, get to change that cover photo to a photo that you guys have submitted. All you have to do is submit that photo into the cover photo contest post, and we all get to vote on our favorites, and we have a brand new one to announce for September. Lee, what do we got for the cover photo this month?
Mr. Scott Page, and this is a husband-wife project.
Oh, very cool.
That's his plane. That's his wife who took the photo, and it won by a landslide. We'll just say it like that. So, congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Page.
Fantastic
for the combination entry, and it looks great up there. It's a nice horizontal photo. It fits just perfectly in the banner window because I don't know if you are familiar with the page at the top, but they're very thin and narrow. So these are the kind of images that fit perfectly. So thanks so much.
Lee loves it when a vertically shot picture wins the contest.
Oh yeah. Nice and horizontal. Yeah. Well, I have to add a little fluff, but let's not go there.
Nah,
I think
that's all right.
Most of the entries are good. You guys are doing a great job, and I encourage all of you who, this is the winning one, but go through and look at some of the history because there are some great photos that get submitted, and I'd like them all to win. But we only pick one winner, but. Maybe you've got something up there. In fact, I don't know if Terry is still on. Terry Dunn was listening earlier, but he took some photos from an event he attended, and he's never submitted a photo. So I said, man, get it in there. You might win.
Terry's a talented dude. He needs to do that. And that's the one thing that I've loved about this contest over the years is how it's really exposed how talented so many of our members are, not just at building amazing-looking airplanes, but really great photographers out there, and I'm always impressed by some of the entries that we get. And this one is no different in that regard.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll add, we've actually, not only has this been a husband and wife photo, but we've had a father-son win twice. Like the son got the photo, and then the dad won. So
yeah,
let's get the whole family in there. Let's get a whole gamut of 5 members. All submit. Let's do it.
Fantastic. Well, guys, that kind of wraps up our, it wraps up our episode of AMR. We want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you got to watch us live, thanks for joining in and joining into the comments. We appreciate all the activity that was going on in there today. If you're watching after the fact, we appreciate you too. Be sure to click that like button, share, subscribe to all your friends. Flip that, reverse it. Share with all your friends and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We appreciate all that support. Lee, you're going to be next month, about the time we're going to be doing the next episode, you're going to be at a show, at an event. Depending on when we end up doing the show, Lee may be joining us on location. We'll see.
On reporter, exactly. I'm reporting live from New Waverly, Texas. I attend an event every year called Best Electrics in South Texas, Tri-County Barnstormers. So this is like the 21st-ish a year because COVID threw everything off. And so Matt and I were talking. I might be able to chime in live and let you guys see what's all the fun's about. So we'll see. Stay tuned.
Could be fun. Well, stick around, and again, I want to make sure you guys are aware. We'll let you know the exact date for the next episode of Air because we want to make sure you get to participate in that awesome Dubro giveaway. All that's coming up next month in October for AMA Air, but for now, we want to thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on AMA Air. Until then, happy flying, everyone.
Happy flying.